Church History segment part 2, D.L. Moody. I promised you all, sindio? So D.L. Moody, Dwight Lyman Moody or Lyman Moody. He was born in February the 5th, 1837. Just a point to say that February, the month of legends. I hope you all know. So this guy was a sixth born of 9. He was a sixth born of 9 to a lady who was widowed very early, Betsy. Betsy Moody was widowed very early, and she experienced such a hardship bringing up these children. In fact, because she was widowed early, the Lord was gracious enough to allow them have the presence of a local Unitarian pastor by the name Pastor Oliver. Pastor Oliver both served as their pastor of D.L. Moody when he was both a young child and also as the father figure to him when he was growing up. When D.L. Moody got to 17 years of age, what happened? He up and went where? To Boston, the city life. Alitaka kuingia jiji. So when he goes to the jiji, what happens to him there? He meets this, he of course first he lives with his uncle. His name is Samuel, who was a shoemaker. Now Samuel had one rule for D.L. Moody. Alimwambia, if you're going to live with me, you'll have to go to Sunday school. Now, I know I mentioned he was 17 years of age. I don't know why the uncle wanted him to go to Sunday school, or maybe Sunday school means something different to those people at that age and time. I will introduce another character when he goes to Sunday school. What happens? He meets this gentleman by the name Edward Kimball. Edward Kimball was a great guy, a Sunday school teacher, a man of God who loved deeply the Lord. In fact, on the 21st day of, of April, he met in the year 1855. Kimball went to where D.L. Moody was working, and he preached to him the gospel, and D.L. Moody accepted the Lord. When D.L. Moody accepted the Lord, he did not just shrink and say, you know what, then preach the gospel to me as I grow up. No, D.L. Moody was very fervent in spirit. In fact, he's recorded to say that he remembers the passion that Edward Kimball had for him and in him. And he said, I will replicate it wherever I go. So when he went, he began to minister. I think in the very next year or that same year, he up and went from Boston, Massachusetts. He leaving his uncle Samuel. And where did he go? He went to Chicago. Now, Chicago was a great town, and he went there to start a new business. Akasema, this all I know to do, I'll go make shoes. He begins to be a shoemaker. Now, when he was a shoemaker, he not only made shoes, he also wanted people to walk in step with the Spirit. Did you see what I did there? What did he do? He began to run a Sunday school in the place. Not just any place. The shantiest, ghetto rest of cities in Chicago. He's where he went and found children who were orphaned, children who were, some were illegitimate, so walikuwa wameachwa. Alikuwa anakaa nao, anawafunza Sunday school, teaching them the word, building them up in doctrine and whatnot. And God gave him grace. But before God gave him grace, in fact, it is recorded that imagine how watu walikuwa wanasema, this guy, he was nicknamed Crazy Moody. Is it Crazy Moody? Crazy Moody. Why? Because why would you even go and minister to these kinds of people? But God gave him grace. He multiplied, he added, and even as he added, the one became two, who became one. Because in that same year, 1962 actually, he met a particular lady by the name Emma. Now, this name will repeat itself twice, but this Emma ended up being Emma Moody, who was his wife. She was not Moody at all because, they raised a family together. That was great. Now, when he continues on to live in Chicago, one Sunday of October, I think it was the 8th of, what's the year? Yeah, October 8th, 1871. Moody anamaliza sermon, ameambia wase, come to Christ, the Lord loves you and everything. And then he begins to hear the city bells. Ding, ding, ding. Now, that was not an abnormal thing, although it meant serious. It meant something serious. It was not abnormal. They used to be common all around. But these city bells were not the same. They were not common and they were not normal. Why? They symbolized one of the most historic days in American history. What happened? The Great Chicago Fire. Now, this Great Chicago Fire was so catastrophic. It ended up killing over 300 people, and it cost the homes of 100,000 residents. Imagine, including properties that D.L. Moody had amassed from the ministry. Zote zika go down in flames. However, the flame did not just light up Chicago, it light up something in his heart. What happened? A renewed passion, a renewed vigor, a renewed enthusiasm to preach the gospel. He said, maneno toneza dedi nikiwa tu hapa, I'll preach the gospel. He continued on to preach the gospel, so much so that in the next year, he traveled all the way from United States of America to Liverpool in the United Kingdom. When he got there, he went with one of his friends, the gentleman who made me now want to give this story. You remember when we talked about the first episode, this lady by the name Fanny Crosby? This gentleman has a name by the name Ira Sankey. So Ira Sankey, Moody, and his family. Ira Sankey was a musician and a great friend of D.L. Moody. The three of them, or D.L. Moody, Ira Sankey, and his family, went to the United Kingdom, and when they got there, they began to preach the gospel. It is recorded he once went to Oxford. Not even once. I think he went there a couple of times. But one of the times he went to Oxford, this gentleman, having received only 4 years of formal education from the ages of 6 to 10, which means he went to school when he could, not because he had to, when he could. He got there, tried to read for them or to them the Bible. His English was not Englishing. He was in the Queensland, but he was butchering the language. The gentleman, vijana wamesoma Oxford, because Oxford has always been the top-notch tangu jadi. I hope you all know that. He writes to them, they write to him, and they give him all the words that he has mispronounced and how he should have pronounced them well, and they give him the letter. Of course, D.L. Moody responded to them in a very cool, calm, and collected way. One time he told them, I am giving glory to God with all the language I know. Are you giving glory to God with all the language that you know? That was actually some serious uppercut in whatever they were thinking. Another time, pia, some of them shrieked at him, wakozileza, what can this uneducated fella tell us? Because wa unajua Oxford ilikuwa tu ya mabigi. But aliwaambia, man, me, I can tell you about Christ. He knew Christ. That's the only talent he boasted in. I know and I love the Lord. So when he got there, he spent over 2 years there. And that's when now he and Ira Sankey walikuwa wanaenda around wakiandika na wakiimba hymns za Fanny Crosby. That's how I told you the hymns got to Europe when Fanny Crosby had never been there. And they ministered to people, veterans, soldiers, and whatnot. This is what happened in that time. After they spent 2 years, he had almost reached out to 2.5 million people in Europe, in United Kingdom and Ireland combined. Around 2.5 million people. And then after 2 years, he came back. He did not come back to Chicago, neither did he go to Boston. He went to Northfields, where he was born. And when he got there, he established at least 2 institutions, one for ladies, one for gents. And this is the name. One of it was known as Northfield Seminary for Women, and the other one was Mount Hermon. Before I continue, I want to mention something he did in the United Kingdom. He influenced the laymen, who were now the pastors, to kuintroduce vitu zenye zinasaidia watoto in ministry na women in ministry. Yeye hakukuwa na chauvinism. Yeye alikuwa hizi, anasema watu wajue kuhusu Yesu. And of course, after he established these 2 things is when now I will introduce to you a character who most probably came to his life before he went to United Kingdom or after. But her name, Emma Dreyer. Emma Dreyer was so educated, so knowledgeable in the things of the word, and she was also an administrator in her own capacity. She, together with other people in Chicago and D.L. Moody, established something very great. It's called the Chicago Evangelization Society. Right now, when you search Chicago Evangelization Society, you won't find it. What will you find? You will find Moody Bible Institute. Man, I love that. I would like to be there. Moody Bible Institute. Those people look very serious, right? Anyway, that's what they did. They established that institution, which has now been training theologians and Christians all around to date. In fact, when D.L. Moody was passing, he had either reached people, he had presented the gospel in pen or in voice to over 100 million people. D.L. Moody alikuwa amereach karibu watu so moja milioni akiwa preacher the gospel. He had also written over 25 books. One of it is known as The Secret Power, another one Prevailing Prayer, another one Notes from My Bible. And he rested at the age of 62 years on December 22nd, 1899, and he was surrounded by his family. Man, how I would like to go, surrounded by my family. I'll say one more thing about him. There's one quote that I really saw about him that really fascinated me, and I'll only say this one, but there's a lot. He said, no man can resolve himself into heaven. Hawezi ukajiresolve uingie mbinguni. So that's it from Church History segment. God bless. Iko easy, sindio? Let's meet the other week. We'll discuss somebody else. Yes.